Hi, ArcfieldWeather.com meteorologist Paul Dorian here on Wednesday morning, April 12th. The warmest weather so far this season is surging into the eastern part of the nation. High temperatures today, tomorrow, and Friday will be at least 80 degrees in D.C., Philadelphia, New York City, probably well up in the 80s on Thursday and Friday, the mid-80s, very likely for Thursday afternoon highs and Friday afternoon highs as well along that I-95 corridor region. Stays dry for the next few days. Probably the next chance of showers will come this weekend in the northeastern quadrant of the nation. There is a system down by the northern Gulf of Mexico that will produce some rainfall in the southern states over the next couple of days. Could actually throw some moisture all the way up in the northeastern part of the nation during the upcoming weekend. There's a relatively dry weather pattern for much of California over the next several days. Before we get to the weather situation, just wanted to point out an article posted right now at arcfieldweather.com on the next great American total solar eclipse. Yep, just 1 year away, April of 2024, there will be another total solar eclipse on U.S. soil. Remember, the last one was in 2017, and that one had totality stretching from coast to coast, from Oregon all the way to South Carolina. Here is a map of the totality zone for this upcoming total solar eclipse. Again, April of 2024. In this particular eclipse, the totality zone will cut across Texas in a northeastward fashion all the way through the Mississippi Valley region and then ultimately into the northern part of New England. Places like Erie, Pennsylvania will be in that totality zone. Buffalo, New York, and as I said earlier, the last one extended from Oregon all the way into South Carolina in this fashion. It really extended from northwest to southeast. This one will go again from Mexico and Texas, cutting across the middle Mississippi Valley into the northern part of New England. In terms of totality, that's where it will be a 100% total solar eclipse right in this zone right here. By the way, the difference between 98, 99%, and 100% is literally the difference between night and day. Absolutely, if you have a chance to get into the totality zone, you should do it. Again, a year away from right now, April of 2024. This particular map, by the way, which you can view more closely at arcfieldweather.com, has the cloud climatology map for that particular time of the month of April. And from a climatological point of view, the best chance for clearer skies will be way down to the south and west, Texas, Mexico, and the greatest chance for some clouds will be up across the north and east, let's say New York State and New England. That's just from a climatological point of view. And again, we have this particular cloud fraction map right there in the posting, arcfieldweather.com. Well, let's walk through last night's zero-Z run of the GFS. It's the operational version. Let's start off by looking at the total snowfall forecast map for the next 10 days. Here we are now, about the middle part of April. Still some snow to deal with across the northern states over the next 10 days or so. Probably two noteworthy items here is there will be some snow up across the northern plains here, Minnesota, Iowa, and some decent amount of accumulations, and not too much going on anymore across at least the central and southern Sierra Mountains. Maybe northern California, higher elevation locations get some additional snowfall over the next several days, and certainly some in the ski areas of the Rocky Mountains will get some accumulating snow over the next 5 or 10 days or so. Well, in terms of total rainfall, total liquid equivalent precipitation over the next 10 days, again, using the zero-Z run of the GFS, California, for at least the southern and central part, mostly in dry weather over the next 10 days. Northern California continues to get some rainfall, and up across the west coast all the way to the British Columbia west coast portion of western Canada. Meanwhile, system over the northern Gulf of Mexico will produce some decent rainfall down across the northern Gulf states, and some of this moisture will actually work its way up into the northeast. We'll see in a moment here over the next several days. Could even result in some shower activity over the mid-Atlantic region, for example, during the upcoming weekend. Well, let's now take a look at the 850 millibar temperature anomalies. And I mentioned up front, warm air is surging, the warmest air so far this spring season into much of the eastern U.S. That includes the mid-Atlantic region, D.C., Philadelphia, New York City, for the first time up in the 80s today, tomorrow, and Friday. And abnormally warm over the northern plains as well. Still some colder than normal air holding on along the west coast. And we'll see in a moment here, we're not quite done with the cold air outbreaks into the central and eastern U.S. Let's move forward here, beginning with this morning on Wednesday. Again, very, very warm conditions extend from the upper Midwest to the Great Lakes to the northeastern states over the next 3 days, really Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Abnormally warm across that part of the nation. Still some cold air hanging on across the western U.S. Now we get into the upcoming weekend. This is the Saturday morning forecast map. Again, 850 millibar temperature anomalies. You can tell strong frontal system right here dividing some colder than normal air over the central plains, the northern plains, and still hanging on to very mild conditions across the Great Lakes into the northeastern part of the nation. This front does work its way to the east, and here we go by Sunday morning, and then finally by Monday morning, that cold front will push through the mid-Atlantic region, northeast U.S., probably late in the weekend, Sunday night time frame, and cooler, certainly turns cooler behind it the early part of next week. Let's now quickly move forward here. Again, notice continuation of some colder than normal air across the west coast, and that cool shot resides for a few days here early next week in the northeastern part of the nation. And we'll go out a little farther in time and notice that there still are some cold air outbreaks destined to reach the central and eastern U.S. This is all the way out to Saturday, April 22nd, about a week and a half away from right now. Still some decent cold air shots coming into the central and eastern states going into the latter part of the month of April. And that's important. Anytime you have the possibility of dealing with some overnight lows near freezing in growing season, that could present some problems. So it's something we'll monitor, especially over farmland, over the Midwest, for example, the northern plains here going into the third week of the month of April. Again, this is about a week and a half away. Well, let's wrap up with the surface forecast maps from the 0Z run of the GFS. And again, we have a lot of moisture here over the northern Gulf Coast. May even be considered kind of a subtropical type of system right in this part of the Gulf of Mexico. High pressure, meanwhile, dominating the scene over the mid-Atlantic region, northeast U.S. And the air is still kind of chilly as we get to midweek here. And you notice that in the overnight lows. It's very chilly and very, very dry air situated in the mid-Atlantic region throughout much of the eastern U.S. And it's been very dry over the last several days. The very low dew points, that allows temperatures to drop off quickly in the overnight hours, but also rebound quickly once the sun comes up. Let's now move forward here with that high pressure. Watch the Gulf of Mexico. Even a little bit of a low here forms over the northern Gulf Coast, maybe kind of a subtropical type of system. It moves to the north and east, and some of that moisture field slides up into the southeastern U.S. by Friday, and even makes its way a little bit so into the mid-Atlantic region by the time we get to the upcoming weekend. This is the forecast map for midday on Saturday. Again, this is some of that moisture that right now is located over the Gulf of Mexico, works its way to the north and east, could produce some shower activity in the mid-Atlantic region on Saturday. And look at this, some accumulating snow up across Minnesota over the upcoming weekend. We saw in a moment here, got a cold shot coming in behind this frontal system right in this region right here. We'll have to watch this setup here, not only for accumulating snow, but maybe from some strong to severe thunderstorm activity in the warm sector during the early part of the upcoming weekend. Now, let's move forward here in time. That cold front works its way to the east, and here we go. By the time we get to Sunday night, you have a cold frontal system right here now pressing eastward into the eastern U.S. With some decent rainfall here showing up for the Mid-Atlantic region. The first decent rainfall, barring some surprises on Saturday. This may be the first decent rainfall in several days later Sunday night with that next strong cold front. Here we go all the way into the morning on Monday, and at this particular time, that frontal system right now is pushing off the eastern seaboard, and again, there'll be some cold air crossing the Great Lakes. Cold relative to the normals for this time of the year, and turning much cooler on the backside of this frontal system in the eastern part of the nation early next week as well. But before we get to that point, warmest weather so far this season for the Mid-Atlantic region, much of the northeastern part of the nation and the Great Lakes today, tomorrow, and Friday, but then a strong cold front puts an end to that over the upcoming weekend over the Great Lakes, and then in the eastern part of the nation by the early part of next week. So again, if you're interested in that total solar eclipse, go right now to arcfieldweather.com and view that story. It's got all the details as to where you can plan to go a year from now in April of 2024. That's it for now. For arcfieldweather.com, I'm meteorologist Paul Dorian.